All right, so we're going to dive into Solana today. This is a big story that is brewing right now. Could this be another contagion tentacle that is stemming from FTX? We'll try to break all that down for you guys today. It's going to be an interesting one. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. We're going to get into not only the story around where Solana is going, some of the pressures that we've seen, obviously, from the FTX situation, but also with the recent news today of several exchanges halting Solana USDT on their platforms. So that in itself starts to lead to a lot of speculation, a lot of innuendo. But what has occurred is there's a lot of confusion. So we'll try to break all that out for you guys and get your input as well. Before we get started, make sure and smash the like button. That's one of the things that helps us get information out to the masses and also helps people that are trying to really discover what's going on in crypto right now. Many people like kind of turned their phones off, turned off their exchanges, weren't listening until they saw MSNBC covering on FTX. I saw Twitter's stream on this just the other day. So the only way you do that, like button, it helps breeding it out there into the algorithm. I do want to thank our sponsor today. That is Trezor.io. If you guys are looking at, and you really should be looking at self-custody, it is the only way to go for you. If you use exchanges, yes, we like Bybit and others out there that you can use. Coinbase, I've started to use Coinbase again, but I use them for short situations. I'm going in, I make a trade, I work my way out into a hardware wallet, and a hardware wallet is Trezor. Trezor is one of the best ones out there. There's a few to select from, but this one I kind of like just because of the let's just face it, that's a cool screen. That's one of the reasons, at least I like it. I have one of these, and I use several different versions. And the good thing that you can look at when you really go into Trezor is the app ecosystem is great, and of course the coins. If you guys are concerned about, well, what can I put on this, Paul? Well, these are the ones you can do. So pretty much anything out there that you're most likely invested on, you can actually do tradable inside the suite, the Trezor suite. There's a lot available there. Solana, not there. But there you go. We'll get into that. But anyway, click the link below. Use our link. It does help us out. All right, so the first story today is really breaking down the news, and that was the issue with Binance, OKX, Bybit, all suspending USDT and USDC deposits on the Solana chain. So this was alarming when it first came out. I think the industry first everybody was kind of looking at, well, what's going on that would cause this, and why? So they did say, and at time of report, we're back into some of these opening back up. Binance did announce that they were pausing it temporarily until further notice on the platform. And there's many things that could speculate in the essence of, is there something brewing here that is somehow tied to FTX and Alameda, or is there something even more sinister out there? And we'll talk a little bit about what that might mean later in the show. But further in, it says it adds, adding that it's reserves and the right in the sole discretion of amend to change or cancel this announcement at any time, reasons without prior notice. This gets me into things that are geared around kind of like the scenario that we've seen in a lot of bull runs or even in flash crashes, where these exchanges will essentially stop trading on certain tokens because of whatever volatility we're dealing with. Were they getting some sort of signal that we were seeing or potentially could see some volatility coming at Solana in general, or maybe even into USDC and T? That is the question mark. For this to kind of happen in unison always raises, if it was just one exchange, I would kind of just push this under the rug and say, okay, they probably got an issue. From a technical aspect, nothing to see here. But the fact that OKX, Bybit, and also KuCoin did it, that's a question mark. So, and it's a question mark that we'll probably get an answer on eventually, but I'd love to get you guys' feedback. Where do you think this is going? Is this something on a liquidity issue? Is this just big boys playing games within the ecosystem of crypto? Or is there something greater afoot here that's tied to maybe Alameda and so on? Here was the tweet right here on KuCoin, join Binance, OKX, Bybit, BitMEX, and also Crypto.com on suspending USDC and USDT deposits on the Solana blockchain. So this really got moving fast this morning, so I'm sure it had some sort of potential pressure on Solana, even though the token hasn't really priced down too much, more so than, and I'll talk a little bit about sentiment and my own analysis on where I think Solana is going. If you've been watching our show, I talk a lot about Solana in the sense that, you know, love the ecosystem, love the developer base, love the utility, don't like what they're doing as, you know, the entity itself. And that goes into the whole aspect around startups and, you know, these abilities where the chain's not operational, those kind of things that just can't really happen in today's age of blockchain technology. Mr. Whale kind of talks about this. Solana entities holding or sold 50 million tokens to FTX. Most of those coins stand vested, and that means that the defunct exchange will gradually gain access to the millions of SOL up until January 2028. Now, obviously, this will roll into, you know, situations that are more in tune with the liquidation procedures, probably in Chapter 11, even though, remember, Chapter 11 is a restructure. So could there be something here that gets restructured? I just don't know enough about where FTX is at this state, but the asset control is there, so that would be the question mark for how this plays out. Here was a thread that I thought kind of points at this to the point that I think a lot of people were looking at, is they didn't understand what was happening around this. But as far as I know, USDT and C with SPL tokens were issued and maintained from Tether. Respectively, there's some angle to Alameda. I don't understand causing the delistings. That was the question mark. And I don't know. These are the kind of things that are happening right now, and it's something we've talked about before, is that could this be a scenario where there is a connection? Now, I just don't know. And that's not funny at all. The issue is that the likelihood we're going to see more and more connections, even though, albeit they will probably be a little bit smaller. This is not a small one, but a little bit smaller in terms of the tentacles moving out into the rest of the space. And even this story kind of talks about a confusion abounds as Binance OKX suspended support for USDC and T. So I don't know, but they backpedaled. So maybe something was there and they got a signal and they started to maybe rethink it. I'm not sure. All right, so let's go into some more tweets here. And I promise we'll get into some of the technicals, you know, on the analysis side of it, as well as some of the sentiment on where this is going. All right, this was a clip that also is kind of not necessarily picking on Solana, but just picking on blockchain in general, that I thought was relevant. But just listening to what they had to say here on Squawk Box.
He's closer to the situation than a lot of the people who work at the Federal Reserve, just in part because he's in the business every day. And it's immediate, not looking at last month or the month before. And I think that his projections are far more spot on. As far as your interview with CJ on crypto, I find the level of arrogance for people who think that crypto is good shocking. I mean, I have problems with the dollar, the same problems that Barry has in terms of the huge amount of debt. But there's clarity, and you know that there's debt, and you can easily switch to gold if you'd like. All right,
so I'm going to stop it right there. So this arrogant statement from Kramer, I mean, this is such hypocrisy in the essence that there is anything in the current financial system that is peering into crypto. Yeah, sure, there's a lot of trash fires going on right now in crypto. But when you look at it in comparison to what traditional finance has faced over the years, and even to this date, right now, the amount of things that we're seeing in traditional finance is, I would say, even more greater in the air of a lot of corruption. Obviously, we know Wall Street and the banks are tied into that. They have control, so it's pretty simple. But when you get into crypto, now all of a sudden they don't have control, and all of a sudden it's the bad place in town. And I think this will continue to start to pit the mainstream media, which is getting worse and worse, one, in understanding crypto in general, much less Bitcoin. And I think it's getting to a point where they feel that there is a potential where they, meaning Wall Street, banks, government, can come in and act as if they are the savior of all of this. And that to me is the hypocrisy that these kind of things play out in. So totally disagree there with obviously where, but that's good. I mean, if we disagree with Cramer, that's perfect because it usually is the opposite occurs. Further into this, Solana's close ties to FTX caused financial and structural damage. And this is the bigger concern that I feel is the one that could play into this. And, you know, the thing behind some elements around this, and this was the balance sheet that obviously precipitated on the run on FTX with some help from Binance's. I don't think it was some. I think it was a lot of help from Binance's chief, and especially Alameda holding 292 million of unlocked SOL, 863 million of locked SOL, and 41 million of SOL collateral. So all of this kind of flows into a much bigger. Let me zoom in on that for you guys a little bit. A much bigger position, and it goes into not only financial but the structural, you know, situation that Solana is facing. And the real question for all of you guys, if you are a big Solana fan, and I'm a fan of the technology, I'm a fan of the devs, I'm a fan of a lot of these projects that are coming out of Solana, but do you think it makes it through this extreme pressure? And if it does it ever come back to its prowess? First of all, I don't think we would, and we talked about this even after the break point, is that I anticipated that we probably would not see Solana return to its heyday of a $200+ token. So I think that is still going to be on the deck for sure. The question is whether or not it can ever make it out of, you know, the 50+ range. This is another piece right here following the 477 million hack of the FTX. There were worries about private keys on Solana-based decentralized Serum had been compromised. And obviously we know the situation with Serum. The exchanges, the keys were held by FTX, and that, of course, caused a lot of redeployment of the fork on the protocol. So again, more structural damage to what it means for the Solana ecosystem. So more and more of that as we get into it. And further on in the story, you know, Solana Foundation details its exposure. Less than 1% of Solana's foundation cash or cash equivalent, so at least you have to understand that. And then while it looks to be facing tough times in short, medium term, the foundation seems confident there's plenty of runway ahead. And you know, the only way there's going to be runway is if there is a lot of faith in the projects and the ecosystem, and we don't see any mass liquidity issues starting to occur. Brings me back to the original topic on the story. Why did the exchanges stop the trading? So that in itself is enough to raise a flag on anything out there. And these are, right now, we are in very, very untested waters. And I think most of you probably are so gun shy with everything. I think in the original scenario, when it was Voyager and Celsius, a lot of people just didn't believe it. Didn't believe it was happening. Luna occurred. All of a sudden, we realized this stuff is real, and it's starting to have major ripple effects around the industry. And then, of course, now with what happened with FTX. So I think everybody's just really gun shy right now, and probably are going to do a lot of knee-jerk reactions, which is the concern I have in terms of liquidity. A lot of this has to do with a project called Project Serum, which was on the top DEX on Solana and provided liquidity for other Solana platforms. Unfortunately, Project Serum was launched by FSBF, another big problem. And the program updated private keys was controlled by FTX, which makes it compromised. So that in itself is a problem. I don't know if you guys watched the interview with O'Leary the other day that's circling around. It kind of became a little bit of a meme, is that Kevin O'Leary was okay with Sam Bankman-Fried coming back into some sort of ecosystem within this market because of his brilliant trading capacity, and that he's one of the top 1%ers. Listen, this guy is a bad guy. Period. There's good guys and there's bad guys. You can figure out which ones are which fairly quickly with the way they just react to the markets, and this is one of those. Granted, very young entrepreneur. I've seen these guys. I was one. Made a lot of mistakes in my early days. And you have to eat those, but the number one thing you have to do is take responsibility and move to the next chapter of your life, which is trying to repair what's happening in yourself so these kind of things don't occur again. Trust Wallet now launching a browser extension. So this is where it gets into the deeper story. Trust Wallet launches the browser extension, integrates with Binance Pay and also Coinbase Pay, which is kind of cool. I don't know. Do you guys use, of the software wallets that are out there? Because there's several out there that you use. Are you a MetaMask user, a Trust Wallet user, a Coinbase Wallet user? Love to kind of get your feed on this, because I think there's some potential here where this may be going after maybe the pay architecture behind Twitter. If you think about the connection here, let me show you a tweet. This came in from, here's Solana Pay right here. Smart message represent the evolution of URLs. So he was going after, this is in, I think it was, they're talking about the potential of a messaging system, maybe on Twitter. And then you've got this scenario right here where Anatoly is saying, hey, I support this, but also sees the means of verification. Elon, can we plug in our own verification protocols for an emoji? So a self-verified group. So is there and was there maybe some competition with Binance Pay and Solana Pay for Twitter? Is there something more nefarious afoot here that is, I just don't know. These are the kind of things that I have to question. Too many of these things surface. Too many of these, I don't know. They just seem very, very interesting happening at the time in which all of this is happening. A lot of coincidences, as they say. And I don't believe in coincidences. There's always something underlying all this. Here is announcement for Binance. They resumed. This was at 10:05. So deposits of USDT on Sol token resumed. So at least we know that happened, but I'm still curious as to why and what is this moving down. More stories on the DeFi and the NFT ecosystem suffering. Can Sol whales offer a bit of help here? And I think the scenario that we have to consider, guys, is the situation we've talked about before, is that whether or not it can ever recover from the losses that the ecosystem have taken, and whether or not those investor hopes will stay solid through this. Because this is not a project that is like a Bitcoin. A hodler on Bitcoin, completely different. And I think you guys could agree with that. If times get rough and we start to see crypto carnage at a truly capitulation level, where would you flock to? Would you flock to Solana? Would you flock to Cardano? Would you flock to AVAX? Maybe even Ethereum? Or would you go to Bitcoin? I mean, let's be honest with yourself. Where would you guys go? Would you go to Bitcoin, or would you go with one of these others? I just, listen, I'm going to Bitcoin. That's where I would go in times of dire stress on the system. It's the number one asset out there, and these ecosystems will need time to rebuild for sure. Here's another piece right here that I thought was interesting. This is Raul Paul. And, I'm a mad respect for Raul. He does, and listen, this guy's one of the biggest ETH bulls I think I've ever seen, outside of the bankless guys. But he talks a lot about it reminds him of ETH when it was down 97%, in 2018. And you guys, wouldn't you have been amazing to see it there? That's what we're dealing with, maybe. And he says, I like Solana, but I understand the chain breaks. And I also understand that they're trying to fix it. It was concentrated and it's in its ownership because of FTX. Yeah, okay. But Solana itself is doing something very clever. In cryptocurrencies, what matters is narrative. And that is true, I will say. But between the narratives, I mean, if you really consider the narratives, which narrative would you say is the number one narrative right now? This is an audience test. I won't give you answers, but which narrative do you think is playing out in crypto for the positive more so than any right now? I mean, come on. Everybody knows it's Polygon, right? Polygon's narrative dwarfs what's happening on the Solana chain right now, in the sense of a narrative of what the future holds, of what the potential for big brands. Remember, Solana is I won't say ragtag, but it is, yes, it has to be a ragtag because that's how startups work. And you have all these dApp developers that are coming up with some really cool stuff. Don't get me wrong. They are amazing. but they're still just young startups. And young startups, the likelihood of them making it through to the next layer is, if you're investing in Silicon Valley, it's 1 in 100, maybe 1 in 1,000 that make it that way. So Polygon's narrative has been a bit different. What do? They go in for partnerships that can't be detached. You've got the situation with Nike, you've got the situation with Artifact. Let's go into Starbucks. Let's go into Disney. I mean, that's the kind of narrative that's playing out in places like that are totally positive. And if you look at the Matic token and you kind of look at it, and we did an analysis on this the other day, it doesn't even seem like it's having an effect by what's happening on the FTX scenario. So kind of crazy for sure. Raul goes on in here and says, Solana has and will be building a narrative which is going to take a consumer chain. Yes, there's some of others doing that. Flow, yeah, that's for sure. But consumer internet, these are the people who've done a deal with Meta, doing deals with Google. And I think that's a good one. Stores, okay, I would say a handful. They got clothing lines, not nearly as tied in now with what Artifact is dumping into the market. And then he says Solana reminds him of Ethereum back in 2018 when the market was down. That could be the case, guys. So don't go completely off the pier just yet on Solana. But what I would simply say, and again, not financial advice. We do these market movers like this all the time. And the goal is give you a bunch of research, give you some opinion, give you some ideas on where this might be going. And it's not financial advice. So make sure and do your own research. I don't think anybody needs to do a lot of research. You've probably been following us and many others around this topic for quite some time. But this is an intriguing situation. And it just likens so much to what happened in the tech bubble. All right, so if you look at Solana, everybody has just been literally frozen in time right here. And you can kind of see it all the way back here to the 11th. Solana started a little bit of a slide down, and then it had a nice little spike, not much. But it has just been literally just sideways. This is the 4 hour, just so you guys, let me kind of zoom up on that just a little bit to give you a little bit. Sideways, trading at 13. I still think that the trend for Solana is that we are going to see more liquidity issues, and the likelihood is we're going to see a sub $10 token. But again, you have to just watch it. I don't know if you're interested in trading this one right now because of the volatility, but if you are, I'd love to get your feedback because I'm a Solana lover in the sense of I love the technology. We have to get past these things. It was unfair for them. I too do believe that it was an unfair situation that FTX basically nailed them on the cross. But unfortunately, they probably would not have been where they are without FTX because of the investments. So it's kind of a catch 22. We'll call it the catch 2022 for that. And sentiment's been running down a bit. So if you guys want to check out our sentiment tools, jump over to Paul Barron Network. You're going to jump in. You should already be part of this diamond circle, which is easy. I'm logged in right here, so you can see some of the things we have. But we've got the power index there, our mastermind group. If you go over to our content here, you just get into our dashboard. You can see sentiment rankings, some of our videos, and this gets into all of our tokens right here. So market is moving up and down. We're dropping more data on this on a daily basis and updating as quickly as we can to keep everybody on point. All right, I know we have a poll coming in. Let's take a look. Why did Binance and OKX? All right, security issues, liquidity issues, attempt on a crash of the SOL price, and whales exiting. So the winners here are liquidity and exiting, which is kind of the same thing. I put that in one bucket. So security, not as much. Interesting. I agree with that. I don't know that, it's still one of those things. Let's get into some questions here. Don't forget, guys, smash the like button. It's the only way people learn about these things, so it's very important. That's how you spread the news. All right, no legit company in their right mind would risk their reputation by building anything on Solana. All right, so that's the problem right now. That's a very good point that you make, Zubarev. Zabarev, is that partnerships are very key. Could it have the scarlet letter on it? Could it be in one of those scenarios that we just are dealing with an ecosystem that people just, well, it's just not something I want to build on right now. I'd prefer a different alternative. Solana is still the fastest development, most usage, no doubt, still is. Wow, we got people pulling out of crypto entirely. Look at this. Look at this. Defectors I see. Man, that's what capitulation is, people. That's how you see it. That's when all of it is over, right there. Can render port over to Matic? That would be an interesting concept. Is Binance trying to become a monopoly? Oh, is that what you're thinking? Maybe that's a possibility. Who knows? Honestly, I still feel good about Sol's future. I could be wrong, but Sol diehards are forced in my. I agree, but back to the original content is that, there could be some scenarios that we just don't see a lot of. Well, remember, you have to win the devs continuously, and you have to get the partnerships. So that's for sure. Back up the truck on Sol or run for the hills. Okay, I will tell you this, guys. My Solana positions are exited. I don't have any Solana at this time. Also, projects to Cardano. You guys are just, you love to bring Cardano right back into the conversation. MasterCard was also on stage as well today. Currency Cloud is another big partner for Ripple. And then there comes Ripple, boys. The army is in the house. Solana is dead. By the way, we are going to be over at the Decentral Miami coming up week after Thanksgiving. If you guys are down in Miami, we'll be there filming, doing some other things. Let us know and drop some links. Let me know if you guys are coming. Just drop some comments in the comment section below. I'd love to know if you're there. I'd love to meet with some of you guys. So come over and say hi if you get a chance to over at that conference. We'll have a lot of really good interviews, but it's gonna be an interesting conference for sure. Liquidity, Mark K, wrapping up, is a real issue. That's how the markets work. Good point. All right, guys, if you're on the podcast over there right now, tune in to our YouTube channel. That's where you're going to catch the charts, a lot of our analysis, a lot of our breakdowns. It's really where you get a chance to get all immersed into the content. And I know the podcast is growing, and it's fantastic. I mean, we're top 5 podcasts right now in crypto for TechPath. Catch our Metaverse Insider podcast. I think we're in the top 10 for Metaverse and NFTs. And it's pretty cool. So check my Twitter also. We got nominated for Best Metaverse Channel, and I didn't even realize that we were even an influencer. So that was news to me for the Decentral thing. So anyway, you guys, if you want to catch me, it's out on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.